Alright, welcome back to the channel. I'm Nate. If you've seen my car in previous videos, you'll know that I put some LEDs underneath it and all around it. There's 400 of them. So with those, I can individually control them and make them do whatever pattern I want. So I figured, why not put some on the inside? So I took the car apart. So these are the fiber strips. These are side glow fibers. These are what I'll be using. And I've got two different styles here, along with a little bit larger one that I'm gonna put on the dash. But the first style has this little 1mm rib that runs along the edge of it, and this style has no rib. So think of this more like the Tesla T logo, where it's got the fine point. So this is how we're gonna notch all the corners. And all you do is kind of simply go around, push it in, and with that little extra rib or spine down the back of it, that'll help hold it inside the door panel and keep it from falling out. Even when closing the door, I don't have an issue. But using a heat gun around all the corners, notching the corners, and just kind of pushing it in and slowly working with it, and that's how you get it in. So you can see I've got a strip on the very top of the door. That'll be channels 1 and 6, and then around the infill section, that'll be, what is it, 2 and 5, and then the pocket down below will be, what is it, 3 and 4. So there's 1, 2, and 3. You can see 3 goes down to where the pocket is, and then 2 goes around the trim. And then here's a look at 4 and 5. And then we'll go up to 6, which is back up at the top of the door panel. And so all the doors are pretty much laid out this kind of same similar way. They start from the, if you were facing the door, be on the right hand side as channel 1, and then kind of works its way around. So the back passenger door is the first one in the chain here, and then goes around to the front passenger. I won't get into too much. It does some other stuff here, but we'll get into that further into the video. So for the LEDs, this is kind of the only style. Is either a single pixel like this or a LED strip. There's one other style that Adafruit makes, but they're like $15 each, that are 3-watt LEDs. Be perfect for this, but I end up putting 40 of these LEDs in, so you do the math. Be quite expensive. So what we do is we just grind off these diffused LEDs, get kind of close down to the chip. If you go too far, you'll break the surface and destroy the chip, but you're looking for that hot spot in the middle there, and that's what we're going for. So here, this is the 12-volt version. You can see how it's pinned out, and in the center there's also DI for the data in, and on the opposite side, that center pin's marked DO. If not, then that's what it's used for. So apply a little hot glue around the LED, take a little piece of heat shrink, force the heat shrink on there. Of course, the heat shrink will kind of start shrinking because of the hot glue. It's hot, but the hot glue will kind of bond it, and I found this holds up fairly well. It's fairly well stuck on there, and kind of the only option I see of kind of self-centering the fiber later on. But this is one of the bigger processes of doing this whole thing. At the very beginning, I showed there were some screw-on versions. Those are just standard RGB. They're not individually controlled. It's just one controller Bluetooth unit. I was kind of mocking up the whole system. This is getting into the individually controlled. So it's coming up with my own idea. So we'll put a little hot glue in the center there, and as soon as we start doing that, the heat shrink will start shrinking because it's hot. And so at that point, we got to shove the fiber in as quick as we can, and let that sit for a minute. You can see here that it's shooting through to the other end. I've already done one, so we're on to 3 here. I think in this particular video, I actually messed up the order and I had to go back. I didn't refilm it again, but you get the kind of gist of it. Kind of take your time and think of how your layout's going to be, and make sure you kind of figure out what pattern and where you're going to start at in the vehicle when doing these adjustable LEDs, because there's a start and there's an end, so you got to pick where that's going to be. And I chose the rear passenger door for that. So Just continuing to fill them, placing each one. This one you can see I wasn't quick enough. I didn't get it quite on there, but it was able to. The heat shrink kind of popped out and self-centered itself, and that one was good to go. If you do kind of misalign them or don't quite get them in right or quick enough, the heat shrink, you just cut that back using a little razor blade. You can even put a little alcohol on the hot glue and it'll just pop right off. That's what it looks like. So that's the inside of the door panel. Thanks to Alexa, we'll turn the lights on. And I start in, put a couple dabs of hot glue, just kind of hold the wires in. You don't want any vibrations as you're going down the road and you hear like tapping or ticking sound. Now where I have the two top LEDs, they're kind of in at a bad spot. The bolt that goes through underneath the door handle that attaches the door kind of rests in that area. So I ended up later on having to move them when I went and did the install, and just shifted them up, and they were perfectly fine. So no issues. Just kind of keep that in mind when if you're doing this. Just think of where things are getting mounted at, and it may look convenient one location where you're going to mount your LEDs, but you got to think of is there something that's going to be holding the door on from there. So this is what they look like. There's a LED on either end, individually controlled, so I can make them do whatever color, and so the middle will kind of blend them. I even did the front speaker grills. So the front two doors has, I think, 8 channels. 2 at the top, the trim insert, the pocket, and the speaker, and then the back 2 doors has 6. So that's the gist of what they look like from the back side. So let's take a look at the doors. Let's get them apart. For the back doors, in order to run the wire to the door jamb, we're gonna have to remove all of these bolts going around the outside of the motor assembly for the window. The nuts in the middle there, we're gonna leave those alone. Don't wanna touch those. That's part of the actual window assembly that the window slides up and down on. But you can see there's a clip here and one on the other side right here. They'll be popped out, and I marked them right here so you get a general idea. That's really what's holding the door in once you take all those bolts out. To get the window, you're gonna have to take the window off. So to get that off, you're gonna have to align it, bring it up and down until you get the bolts to line up in this hole. And you'll undo the 2 bolts and pull the window out. So I've already removed the window. We're going to pop these 2 clips. There's that one and that one. And then let's undo a couple of these bolts. Don't forget the window motor. We want to get that detached, along with the backup kind of pull release that's on the rear doors that wasn't implemented, but it's still there. If you're interested, I'll leave a link in the upper right hand corner. Tesla did a little mod to where you can actually bring those inside. So if the back passengers needed to get out without power or without the vehicle having power, they can still pull those little rings, and that'll pop the door open just like the front has. So we've got this one last bolt, and those are the 4 nuts. We're going to leave those 4 in place. Do not remove them. That's one mistake, and luckily I didn't do it. But this took a little while to figure out what exactly was holding the door on. There's not much of a video online. So hopefully this will help you if you decide to work on a Model 3, or at least remove the window. So the whole unit comes out as one. The slide, the cables, everything, the motor assembly, it's all one. So this is only on the rear doors. The front doors is a little different. The track and the motor will stay in place, but the motor's attached to a separate panel, and we'll get to that later. But that's the grommet that we're gonna have to go through, so we can get it through the door jamb. So you can see here, this is where it goes in from the B pillar. Comes down. I use a little foaming dish soap inside there, and the wire is pretty easy to kind of just force through, and Put some Velcro on there to keep it in place. You don't want this rattling around. And you also want to follow the original harness because the window's got to go up and down, and it kind of goes around all of that. So here's the front door. You got some screws around the whole entire plastic piece, but that center piece is going to pop out, and that's what's going to stay with the motor. The speaker comes out with it. You don't have to attach or detach the speaker. And so here's the grommet kind of going through. You're just going to pull off the corner or the side of it there next to the body. Peel it off, get your wire pushed through, a little dish soap, you can see it there in the rubber grommet. Once you get the wire through, then we're going to pop that plastic trim piece off. It's easier to do it now after you got everything through. You just push those two tabs, two on the other side, and the whole thing pops out. Put it back together and push it back in, it snaps in. So here you can see everything's Velcroed in. Follow the original harness. That way everything's kind of out of the way and it's not going to be rattling or anything. See, I got it pushed back in, no problems there. It's on the passenger side. Kind of see in here a little bit. You can see where the wire kind of comes through. The driver's side's a little tighter, so kind of keep that in mind and kind of fish around and whatnot. But I started from inside the door and pushed out to the A-pillar there to get the wire. I found it easier that way than trying to go from inside the car to the door panel. So running along Velcro, run it through the little rubber grommet there that sits at the bottom of the door with the foam, and it comes out with the rest of the harness. Here's the other rear passenger door, same thing, it's glass. And let's get started on the seats. So that's going to be the in-betweens. So to pop out the headrest and to get the back panel off, we're going to have to pull these little clips off. And let me get a screwdriver here, I'll show you what it looks like. So you're going to pop one on this side, one on the other side, and then it kind of just pushes right up. And that's how you get the headrest off. You don't have to remove it completely. You just bring it up maybe about 2-3 inches. And then you're able to pop off that back panel. You can see where those two holes are there on that panel. That's where the wire or the headrest is going to come down through. There's some plastic clip there that kind of holds it. So you may have to push in a little bit as you kind of pull down, and it'll pop free. But you can see here, I've notched the fiber around the corners there. Use a little hot glue around the edges. Just use some clips there to kind of hold it in place while the hot glue dries. And that's what you get. That's what it looks like, all wrapped up. There's the left corner, kind of how I tucked it in to kind of get away from the hinge there. And the right hand side, same thing, a little dab of hot glue there and kind of holds it in place. The LED is in the middle. Now that back panel won't come off unless you take the whole seat out, and it's still part of the frame. The leather piece at the very bottom, or pleather, it's kind of strapped in there. And then here's the center console, and all the wire is going to run up to the A-pillars. The kick panels there. That's kind of like the hub where everything sits. And so here's what the front doors look like. Pockets. This is the non-spine or ribbed version fiber. This is what I used here along with the dash and the back of the seats. Worked out great here. Same with the dash. It was the only thing I was going to be able to get into the dash. And I kind of split between the bottom trim here. I'll show you here in a second. But like these corners like this, I just heat them up with a heat gun, kind of mold them in place, push them in, and that's it. That's all it takes. And then the corner back there, that's where I notched it to go around. You got to bend it, whatnot, but you kind of get the point. So here's that plastic trim. So on the bottom, between the bottom gray trim and the wood trim is where I shoved it in at. And I found it easiest just to take the whole dash there, that whole piece out. Pops out fairly simple. You take the two caps off on the side, and there's the plastic trim at the very top where the vents at, to the bottom left of the image right now. And you'll pop those two caps out and the whole thing just pops off. So.
Alright, we're to the point of testing. This is running everything off the car. We're going to test out everything for the first time. So theoretically, if I hit the open door, everything should power up and we should have lights.
Wonk, wonk,
And we
wonk.
got nothing.
So at this point, the car
Check the
pretty much
door
went into
handle.
like deep sleep. So we have to physically close the door and reopen the
car
door
really dead.
to get it to fully wake up.
Okay, let's close the door. There we go.
So you can see down on the floorboard, that's the ESP8266. I used that to mock up this whole system. And apparently the USB cable I used is a little faulty. It's reversible, so it can go either way. Pretty nice. And it's 90-degree also. So once we get that flipped over and plugged in,
There we go. Aha!
Arduino powers
power?
up. The LEDs already had power. They were running on 12 volts. And that's what it looks like. So there's a hell of a mess down on the floorboard. All of that will kind of get tucked up and pushed out of the way and hidden in the panels and whatnot. But that's what the front dash looks like. And now I know there's already going to be questions about how bright is it, what's the reflection like, so on and so forth. I'll get to that at the end of the video. There's some extra code written that will take care of all of that. Anybody notice the 3 in the doors and the trim?
Oh, backed up too far. Yeah, looks pretty cool though.
So that's what it looked like getting everything powered up for the first day, for the first time. You can still see some of the LEDs hanging out. So give yourself a little extra there in the corners, that way you have some room to tuck it. But I ended up going with the ESP32. It's got Bluetooth. I've got some other options that I want to try out for Bluetooth, but it gives me, I think, up to 6 different outputs that I can control. But I added a GPS unit to this and designated 3 outputs. So one of them kind of goes to the inside, and I've got some plans for the other 2 coming up soon. But that's where it lives right now, along with the TP-Link wireless router that everything connects to. And so the inside one now is the master, and that's what's going to serve up the web page. And then via the wireless network, it'll talk to the slave one, which is the one up front that runs the underbodies. And the 2 of them will sync together and run the same show or the same patterns. So you can see here, this is what it looks like going across the dash. Got the larger, I think it turned out to be 8mm fiber, a little too large. The specs, I didn't read the fine print when ordering it. The inside diameter was 5mm, but the casing that makes that side glow added like 1 millimeter on either side. So come to find out, it's a little bit larger fiber than what I anticipated. And as far as these corners, just notch them, heat them up with the heat gun, and kind of push them in. I popped it out originally, that whole panel, just to kind of get the LEDs up in their location. And once they were there, put the panel back in and started nibbling away at the marks to get it around the corners. So while I'm driving with the GPS, I can measure how fast I'm going. And since they're individually controlled LEDs, I don't want to get pulled over by the cops with the red and blue lights. So what they'll do is the dash will fade away along with the center console. The bottom of that center console will still be lit, but the top ones will turn off. And that'll give it just a light glow there in the center console. But the rest of the dash turns off, and that's it. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. Here's a look at what it looks like. Make sure you hit that like button and subscribe. I got a few more things coming up, and if you haven't checked out TeslaCamViewer.com, it's a great Windows-based version TeslaCam Viewer. Allows you to export all your footage, synchronize all your cameras together. I've got a track mode demo in there, so if you've got track mode enabled, you can see your laps and all kinds of stats and info and whatnot. So I'm still working on that. If you're interested, take a look at it, teslacamviewer.com. See ya.